to our beloved Vice Principal Ma'am and the chairperson of our session, Professor Ganguly. My regards to our teacher in charge, Dr. Ganguly, the esteemed faculty members, and most importantly, students. My topic for today is not essentially a very academic presentation, but rather a conversation about gender. A conversation about gender and how gender is available to us, around us, everywhere. With the first slide, if I can ask a rhetorical question, what is the biggest room in the world? And I hope to spend the next couple of minutes coming to a conclusive answer to what the biggest room in the world is. For this particular idea, I would request you not to maybe ask a question back, but to only think among yourselves. If I can put this thought experiment. Say you are a trainee pilot. You are learning to become a pilot. While you are learning to become a pilot, you are on a long-haul flight which comes across a technical difficulty. You land at Sydney in Australia and you are told that your plane cannot essentially travel for some time and it will need some repairs. You have the rest of the evening and the night available to you while the plane is undergoing repairs. You decide to go around Sydney, because why not? You are in Sydney, why not explore the city? So you decide to do that. You go to a bar, and at the bar, you see your captain at the other end of the bar, sitting in an evening gown. I want you to ask yourselves, what are you going to go and talk to the captain about? Again, I would not want any of you to answer any question here for this particular idea here, simply because whatever you have thought of what you want to ask your captain is what is essentially one of the connotations of a gender bias that can exist in a lot of us. This question, this thought experiment is very often asked in corporate interviews, primarily to men. Why? Because whether a particular person, generally a male, is able to, without being told the reality, imagine your captain to be a woman in the first place. Depending upon what you thought the captain was wearing, when I told you the captain was wearing an evening dress, if you presumed the captain to already be a woman, well and good. A lot of us would not end up doing that. It makes more contextual sense for us on Women's Day to presume that, since I'm coming here and talking to you. But again, from personal experience, a safety precaution, maybe don't try a lot of this question to a lot of your loved ones, because we may not like the answer a lot. A lot of people end up presuming the captain to be a male, and that is why I have specifically worded here to be his captain. His captain here is for the trainee pilot. A trainee pilot can be a male, but if the trainee pilot presumed without being told the reality whether or not their supervisor, somebody superior to them, can automatically be a woman or not, is an implicit gender bias that can actually exist in a lot of us. There has been a brilliant conversation for some time about chivalry and chauvinism. How chivalry is supposed to be chauvinistic. I am not going to delve into that debate. I'm not going to talk about whether chivalry is chauvinistic or not. I would present it in another thought experiment to you. We are accustomed to, with the way our society is designed, of men holding doors or holding the chair out for women. Well and good. We do not want to get into a debate of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's a personal choice. I want you to think whether men are okay with this chivalrous activity, these chivalrous acts to be done to them by other men. Would, when there is not a power dynamic involved, when there is not a waiter in a restaurant involved, when there is not a door person involved, when there is not a teacher and a student relationship, when there is not an intimate personal relationship involved, in a normal scenario between two equal males, when one male holds out a door for another male, what would the other male feel? If the idea is that the other male at times would feel uneasy with it, that is probably because that male did not like being treated the way women are normally treated. Would men like to be treated the way women are normally treated, be it in a good sense? Chivalry is supposed to be a good sense. When holding the door out or when pulling out a chair, if men like to be treated the way women are normally treated, if I am misjudged or misgendered to be called a she instead of a he, do I feel insulted? If I do, then implicitly in my head, I consider being a woman to be, may I say, an insult? If I feel insulted in being misperceived as a woman, do I feel that being a woman is somehow lesser, that I felt insulted? That is another bias that I just want to present out to you, something that tends to exist. It may not exist in this room, it may not exist with most people we know, but it certainly exists. The rest of my paper, the rest of my idea here is to talk to you about structural violence. Structural violence in the sense that there are things that are there in the structure that are designed in a way today that are particularly sexist, that are particularly designed to be not for women, that are particularly designed in some way against the interests of women. Johan Galtung came up, Norwegian sociologist, he came up with the idea of structural violence, and this idea can be replicated with race, with caste, with a lot of other dynamics, but we will look at it here from a gender perspective. Structural violence. We all know about fire trucks, fire engine and fire equipment with respect to firemen, which is a normal idea we have. When there is a gender question asked to the idea of firefighting equipment, what is often said is that the firefighting equipment tends to be very bulky, heavy in nature, not particularly amenable to women. Well and good. The idea is that these firefighting equipment, was designed primarily in Western Europe. When this equipment reached Asian countries, Eastern Asian countries in China and Japan, what these countries needed to do was they needed to redesign these equipment to cater to the men of Eastern Asia by making them a little lighter and smaller, because physically, biologically, Western European men are different from Eastern Asian men, physically. This is genetics. What ended up happening is that these redesigned firefighting equipment of Eastern Asia were actually very well suited for women in Western Europe. With the modern technology, it's entirely possible to make firefighting equipment with aluminum and tons of other metals and alloys and plastics, which can be equally or more effective, yet lighter, less bulkier, and amenable for women to be able to use. We choose not to design them in a way. We choose to continue to keep the designs which were designed earlier for men. In the next example we have, and something we've, at least particularly we feel on a daily basis. Air conditioners, especially industrial air conditioners for larger rooms, not home air conditioners, but larger air conditioners were originally designed to be for a typical 40-year-old office-going male who usually wears a suit, a tie, a blazer, a normal office attire, what is understood, which the air conditioning being designed for, when that same air conditioner is now serving a more equal workplace, women automatically tend to feel colder at workplaces, definitely affecting productivity when women tend to feel colder, because clothing for women in a workplace is definitely not what men with blazers tend to have. We have structured ideas of air conditioners also being designed wherein women tend to lose out. This is particularly interesting. If I ask you what a heart attack looks like, what does a heart attack look like? A heart attack looks like chest pains and symptoms that we particularly know of shooting pains down someone's upper left arm. This is the concept known as a Hollywood heart attack. This is what the heart attack looks like to us from a popular media perspective. This is what normal heart attacks look like, on men. Most of the studies initially on cardiac diseases and what heart attacks are supposed to look like were studied with men. Women, when they have heart attacks, do not have the same symptoms. Women do not have chest pains or upper forearm pain for one to recognize that this is a heart attack and a medical emergency is necessary and we need to get something done. Women tend to have stomach pains, nausea, and fatigue, which are usually considered atypical. We would not consider having these symptoms as being heart attack symptoms simply because we are not accustomed to the idea that women's heart attacks are not the same as men's heart attacks. When I'm talking about structural violence, these are not just violence in, say, just air conditioners or productivity at a workplace. It's about violence that exists in our minds because of the way things are designed around us and for us. Today, a lot of the research which ends up happening for medicines, this research is conducted on male cells, on male experiments, when in reality, we are aware of the fact that male and female cells are different. If we do not come to an idea, a medical understanding of what different medicines have impact on female cells, we are essentially losing out on so many treatment options that actually should be amenable for women, but are simply missed out. Restroom floor plans. In larger offices, you have restrooms which they design in a way wherein you have the equal amount of area given to both the gendered restrooms. But if you can see the image, you can very well see that between the restrooms for both the genders, one is able to accommodate for 8 people and another for 4 people. You automatically end up having conversations around how women's restrooms tend to be a little more crowded. That is because by design, even when we are making an attempt to make restrooms of an equal size for both the genders, in reality, the capacity that these restrooms are able to provide is essentially different. Automobile designs. Automobiles are also particularly not designed for women. Very simple example, when somebody is sitting at the driver's seat, when it is a typical male, that typical male will have the driver's seat a little behind them and they will be able to reach the pedal. When a woman who typically has a shorter height will require to pull the chair a little ahead towards the steering wheel to be able to reach the pedal, the problem is that in case of an accident, when the airbags need to be deployed, a woman's face and thorax region will be much more closer to the airbags, which can lead to injuries, and scientifically it's been proved that they have led to more injuries. These injuries by cars designed for women is another example of the structural violence that actually exists for women in our daily lives. Similarly, even the way in which the chairs are arranged. The chairs are arranged with a headrest wherein women, because of a shorter height, their necks are not as much supported by the headrest, which ends up causing a lot of injury in cases of accidents. Pink tax. There is a lot of conversation about pink tax, and I'm sure a lot of us have heard about it. Pink tax is referred to the amount of money that women actually end up having to pay more for very similar products. For the longest time, and that is not the case today, but for the longest time, when GST was introduced, 18% GST was imposed on shaving cream and 28% GST was imposed on makeup products because makeup products were deemed to be luxury items. That is what 28% GST is usually reserved for. That is not the case anymore. They are both at 18% today. But the fact is, this conversation needed to be brought up that women's products, women's makeup products cannot be put at a higher price just because they are perceived to be luxury items. Similarly, I have an image right here for razors. Very similar razors, different prices because they are marketed to people, marketed to genders differently. Another slide has a very similar grey t-shirt for everybody, marketed differently. One being of $7.99 for the men, if you're not able to see, and $9.99 for the women. For the same day, for the same t-shirt, at the same site, on the same scenario. Just a simple grey t-shirt. This is from Myntra.com, just in case. But the idea is, paying tax is not necessarily the money that goes to the government even. It's the money that goes to the corporates, to the companies, because of the way the companies or the society designs for products to be labeled differently for different people. That was the last example I had. And if I can put forward to you an idea by Nancy Tuana, who basically says that our refusal to know, or the ignorance that we have, is an epistemological political project. Essentially, what we do not know is not just a mere error. We tend to think that we do not know this, it's a mere error, which is fine. Yeah, it is an error, but it cannot be restricted to just an error. It is a purposefully created political project for ignorance to be the norm of the day. Because we live in a male default world, wherein the default human being is a male, there tends to be an absence of the way things should be designed for half the population, which is entirely missing. Before I conclude, it's very often asked, why feminism? Why feminism? I think we need feminism, or personally, I need feminism because I wish I did not need feminism. A lot of progress has been made. A lot of progress has been made as to where we are today. Ma'am very brilliantly pointed out so many legal battles and loopholes that we needed to reach today to where we are. But the biggest room in the world is essentially room for improvement. Thank you.